afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Fridays with Keenan's Cutting Edge, where we discuss all things edge and have fun doing it. My name is Jenna Labor, and I will be your host as we explore the dynamic world of Don Keenan's trial philosophy, The Cutting Edge. Those of you joining us live this afternoon are receiving early bird access to this episode. You have the opportunity to ask questions and interact with our speaker. If you happen to be unable to join us live, however, episodes will be released the following week. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and click the alerts bell to make sure you don't miss an episode. Today, we have Danny Ellis with us, speaking on what we like to call the Tenancy Summit. Danny is a member of the Keenan Trial Institute faculty, teaching admitted liability, depositions, and probably other courses as well. He also litigates tractor trailer cases with a law firm called Truck Wreck Justice that has locations coast to coast. You may be fooled by his background today. It says Seattle Truck Law because they have locations in Washington as well as in Tennessee. We'll put a link to his website as well as his contact information in the comments below. Danny is here today to give us the lay of the land of what is going on in Tennessee. In the olden days, Danny used to hold this summit live. Oh, there we go, Chattanooga. That's more geographically
That's more like
accurate. So Danny used to hold this summit live with other Tennessee practitioners, but I asked him to bring that tradition to our podcast because knowing about the lay of the land, any legal quirks, especially as they pertain to edge principles, is useful to others outside of Tennessee who might get a call from someone needing a lawyer in Tennessee, or who might be interested in trying a case in Tennessee. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like your state to be featured in a podcast. Maybe you would like to join us as a speaker, share the lay of the land in your state, and how you make edge principles work for you where you practice. This podcast is all about delivering what you want to hear, so don't be shy about sharing topic ideas. As Papa Don always says, if you want to know more about it, chances are someone else does too. Now, without further ado, I will turn the spotlight over to Danny Ellis.
Well, thank you, Jenna. So let me just start here. Tennessee charge. What I want to do today is just kind of talk to you a little bit about what we have done with Tennessee and our group here in Tennessee. People will ask me lots of times, what is it about the edge that makes it so special? It makes it work. And I think one of the keys is our listservs. Now, there are 100 listservs out there, right? There's a AAJ listserv for this. There is a who knows, whatever type of trial strategy listserv. You got your trial, state trial listservs, and they've got their place. You know, if you want to sell tickets to the Tennessee Titans, or if you want to give away tickets to Vandy, if you can even do that after last week's debacle. But with the edge, the listservs serve a vital function, because that function, you get on and you can talk about principles. Like we've already had a couple of issues this week in Tennessee talking about, gentleman got on, Russ Thomas, who was one of our charge folks, got on, was asking about, he was telling us about his voir dire and how, you know, he was looking for the folks that just weren't going to line up with him, and how, because he knew the law, he ran out of folks and the judge didn't know what to do. And so he's coming back to the drawing board. Other instances from our listserv will be, hey, I've got this motion. There's actually a new nuance to it. What do you think? In Tennessee, there's still a fight going on about direct negligence. And so we're talking about the principles, how to save direct negligence causes of action, but more importantly, why we need to save those causes of action. And so 2019, our listserv really needed a shot in the arm. We were kind of getting stale, and the Keenan Trial Institute, our motto is Amat Victoria Curiam. You know, victory favors the prepared, or those who work hard. And I got the idea about the charge from two places. One, we know that Papa Don is a Marine, and Marines don't retreat, they strategically withdraw. So I didn't want to say it was a retreat. And I also had heard of a group from my college days that they wouldn't have retreats, they would have charges. And so what I and the other folks of the Tennessee Edge group decided we would do is we would get together and we would have a session, and we call it the Tennessee Charge. And the reason we called it the Charge, everybody's going to say, well, why do this? Why are you doing this? Well, like I said, it was to put a shot in the arm. The other thing about the state listservs that's so great is you're going to have a great mix of folks. So in Tennessee, we've got folks that are just starting out. Craig Glenn, if you're watching, shout out to you. And then we have the gray hairs. And we love them affectionately, right? That's Tony Seaton, that's George Fussner. And they come with all kinds of edge principles. And so it's great to get everybody in the room together, because when we're all in the same room, things start bouncing around. Now, what I want to do for those of you who are watching who are in the edge system, if your state listserv is kind of lagging a little bit, one of the things that I hope to accomplish today, not just to kind of be the kickoff, one of the things that I am charged with doing, as well as Lucas Faust, is trying to re-energize, and Mindy Bish, is to re-energize our listservs. So this is a great way. You know, the why is, yeah, we want to jumpstart our group, get everybody refired up. And so what better way to do that than Evans Mill? So first thing on your checklist is you got to have a venue. Now, the reason we chose Evans Mill, one, it's secluded. When you do this, when we did this, we felt it necessary to get away for a couple of days. And I mean, we walked away, we put our phones up, we came together as a group. We didn't want anybody to be distracted. Nobody's leaving to go check their phones. Nobody's leaving to check their emails. It is 100% laser focused. This is what we're doing. So you got a nice little picturesque here of Evans Mill. It's secluded. It's in Smithville. Smithville's in the middle of nowhere. It's by Center Hill Lake. You also want to have a great place to just be quiet and fellowship as well. Here's a picture of the lodge. And just so folks know, it was all inclusive. Like, we purposely chose this place because we didn't leave for anything. We ate there, we slept on premises, we worked. Here's a picture of the conference room where we were. So basically, we shut those doors. The only time somebody came in was to put new water in. We would take breaks every now and then. I know that's contrary to Edge principles that we had to have bathroom breaks. And we would go literally from sun up to sundown. And then after that, we would eat, go outside on the deck, and we would fellowship for the rest of the night. And it was great. Now, sounds great, Danny. Sounds like a great vacation. Actually, it wasn't. What did we talk about? And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, is getting back to the basics. When we did the first charge in 2019, we wanted to be laser focused because I felt like, as the listserv moderator, we had stepped away and lost kind of touch with the basics. And I put Michael Jordan up here because he is an inspiration to growing up. That's who I wanted to be, right? Gatorade. I like Mike. I wish I could be like Mike. When Michael Jordan would have issues with his shot or with his dribble, he would go back to North Carolina, he'd find a gym, and he'd get back to the basics: dribbling, shooting, all kinds of things like that, just working on the motion over and over and over again. So what we did was we started at the very basics. Now, this is how old this slide is. It still says reptile, right? What does it take to have an edge case? Safety rules, codes, tentacles. That's where we started. Spraying the tentacles of danger. So we started there. And basically how we did is we had, about the first time around, we had about 14 folks. And what we would do is we'd stand up, we would say who we are, we'd say how long we've been on the edge journey, and then what we were hoping to accomplish from the seminar. And every one of them wanted to know how to better have an edge case. And so it was awesome that we were able to start here, and we would have the person talk about their case and give their billboard. And then we would go and work and see if this case fit the edge principles, which then would come into the case selection criteria. Who were the random victims? Why should Bubba care? What's the system failure? And so the first morning was spent going through everybody's case, listening to that person trying to explain to us why the case was an edge case or why it wasn't an edge case. And then everybody would join in. We also talked about the safety rules. So after we went through the case selection criteria, we would have people put the rules up on the board. And so we would have to go through and we would talk about the 7 rules for safety rules, right? Because there was a system that has to be in place so that we can draft the safety rules. If you remember back to Edge 1, the publication that was of the blogs, Papa Don way back when wrote an article or a blog article about how you craft your safety rules because people were messing it up. And he came up with 7 ways to do it. It's in the Edge 1. If we want us to talk about it here, we can. But hopefully everybody's far enough along in their Edge principles and have read the article that they know what it takes to do a safety rule. But in a nutshell, your rule better tell you what happened, was it preventable, and who could have prevented it. Now, you also have to have a motley crew, right? So here was our first group that we had at Evans Mill. This was actually the last day. And just so you don't know that it was not just a free-for-all and fun, here's Tony talking. And so at this point in time, we're probably past the rules section and we're past the case selection criteria, and we're hammering home. And the whole idea was we were going to walk through the entire trial through the first charge. So what we did is we took the principles of what it takes an edge case, what's the case selection criteria, what's the rules that we're going to have, and we started talking about how do we work that into our discovery. But probably the epiphany moment in the very first charge that we ever had was when Tony got up and started talking about systems failures. Now, Jenna is right. I've taught lots and lots and lots of courses. In fact, right now I'm dean of the deposition college. And one of the things that we kind of see a lot is folks don't get this concept of a systems failure. And the system failure can either be something that the corporation is doing over and over again wrong, or that the conduct is such that it's so egregious it's out of control, like a distracted driver. Distracted driving is a menace on the roadways. And so Tony spent a good hour talking about that. And, you know, it was so much so that John Willis, like, his mind is blown. Actually, no, it's not. It was just, it was hard, because then what we had to do is we had to go back around the room and go, okay, well, wait a second. We had the case selection criteria. We had our rules, but where's the systems failure? And once we did that again, then we rewound and went to the rules again. We rewound and went through the case selection criteria again. And then we had folks get up and just have to start talking. Either it was we were practicing role play and depositions. Okay, how are you going to get this rule? How are you going to get the foreseeability? How are you going to get the preventability? And we would have folks get up and role play either that aspect of it, or we also did some jury selection. How are you going to work this into jury selection? And so we talked about jury selection and the ideas behind jury selection. What are we trying to accomplish when we're picking a jury? And so we really wanted to go back to the basics, and we pulled out some blog articles, and we wanted to, first and foremost, we didn't want to act like lawyers, right? We wanted to make sure that when we were asking the questions, when we were conducting the jury selection, that we were acting like non-lawyers. The term is off code. But then we wanted to talk about ways that we can incorporate to get Bubba, the juror, on the same page as us. What is it that we're going to need to ask to get them to see the system failure, to hear the Jaws music, to incorporate that? And so one of the things that we wanted to do is we really wanted to go back to the very, very, very beginning. And so we stopped, and at one point we went, it would probably be good for us to break out the original Welcome to the Revolution book, the book that started all of it off. And so what we did was, Papa Don would tell us all the time in the seminars, if you go to the colleges, what's the most important chapter in the Welcome to the Revolution book? Jenna, what's the most important chapter in the Welcome to the Revolution book?
Well, I'm going to be very embarrassed if I get this wrong, but my understanding, it's the case selection criteria. Also
It
the shortest chapter.
It is. So just so everybody knows what we're talking about, this is the book, right? Everybody can see the cover. The book that got it started. Now, Jenna, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh my.
All right, you ready?
Oh, well, yeah.
What's the second most important chapter from that book? The hint is in the question. What's the second most important chapter in the book?
The second chapter?
Very good. The reptile speaks.
Woohoo!
You hit the gold star.
Here.
Right? And what was funny is we actually broke the book open, Jenna, and we read from the book. And so, people are looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, I promise you, Papa Don was not drunk when he wrote this chapter. But this chapter, it's very whimsical, but it has such golden nuggets, right? I exist because there is danger and lethal competition in the world. If there were not, I would not exist. I want to kill whatever threatens or awakes me. I don't like you. I don't like me. I don't like, except I like my genes, not your neighbor's genes. Your neighbor has his own reptile. I will work with the neighbor reptile only if it helps me. Otherwise, I'd soon kill them. And then we started getting down to the lick log, right? I waste no time or energy. I do things the easiest way. I work only when I have a chance of overcoming a survival threat. Otherwise, that snoring and trowel, it's me. I do not get angry. I make you angry so that you will do what I want you to do. I don't get scared. I make you scared so you will do what I say. First things first, and this is where first things first, this is where it started clicking. I deal with the most immediate danger first. You won't much notice the second danger until you take care of the first. Otherwise, some lion will bite off your butt while you're worrying about the tiger half a mile away. That's when things really started clicking for us. After we had gone, that was like the basic moment that I think folks really started cluing in. When we went through the entire chapter and we read about the basic principles, right? Be authentic, right? Because the jurors, Bubba, if you're not authentic, if you're hiding something, you're not safe. You can't be trusted. They just soon kill you. Be genuine. Be simple. If it's complex means that you're hiding something. If you're hiding something, you're dangerous. You got to get rid of you. But we really focused on this first in time, because a lot of times we being the lawyers, think that we know what's going on in the case. And the problem is if we're pushing that agenda and not what Bubba thinks, then there's an issue. Because now you're telling me what to do. See, that's another thing what we learned about in chapter 2. Don't tell me what to do. I'll figure it out. Because if you try to tell me what to do, you're pushing your own agenda. Maybe you're trying to advance your genes over my genes. Your reptile over my reptile. We're not, and it's not in cooperation. So if you're pushing your agenda, I think this is where you should look. Oh, you're being lawyer man. You're making crap up. You're trying to fool me. You're trying to fool me. You're dangerous. I can't listen to you. I'm going to kill you. So with that in mind, that was pretty much the first day. So rewind. What did we do the first day? We basically went over case selection criteria. We went over what it takes to have an edge case. We talked about the systems failure, and then we looked back to the basic fundamental principles of the edge system, right? First in time. Has this happened before? Will it happen again? Who are the random victims? Why should Bubba care? What's the system failure? And the next day, what we did is we came back and we worked on everybody's cases. Now, before you go to an edge summit, to the Tenancy summit, to the charge, you had to submit a case. And the way that you did that is you had to do a couple of things. Number one, you had to do a billboard. Jenna, what's a billboard?
A billboard is a 1 to 2 sentence summary of your case, not
Correct.
to be mistaken for the short phrase that we use during the opening statement. Not the
bumper sticker.
Bumper sticker, right? Not the bumper sticker. Billboard.
All right. Thank you. Poor Jenna. She didn't know she was going to be doing this. She's doing excellent. She's getting all A's.
Attention.
She's getting all A's. All right. So they had to do a billboard, and let me tell you, it's hard. I can tell you countless times as a referring attorney with Papa Don, as an instructor being instructed by Papa Don, how embarrassed I've gotten trying to give a billboard to somebody, right? Mr. Ellis, that's too long. Danny, that's too, what's that? And so what we did as a group, because collaboration, see, that's the other thing. Collaboration is key in this group. Now, folks get really mad because we're like, hey, if you've not been, we don't want to share our stuff with you. There's a reason for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's not because we're trying to hide it. It's just because, quite frankly, we don't want you messing it up, right? I mean, and I know that sounds arrogant. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm really trying to be very humble in how I approach this with you. But there are principles at work here that you need to know the why behind. And, you know, I give an anecdote. I once had a case where I did the jury selection, and, you know, it's, as Papa Don says, it's the sorry dog that doesn't wag his own tail. I did a pretty good job early on. And I had a couple of folks who wanted to buy the jury selection from the court reporter. And she called me up and she said, hey, I just wanted you to know that I have so-and-so that wants to buy this jury selection from you. And in Tennessee, when you pay the court reporter, it's your property, even if it's at trial, unless there's an appeal, and then it becomes a public record for the whole world to see. Since there was no appeal and the 30 days had run, and I knew there would not be an appeal, it was my property. And I said, no. And I had people say, well, why would you do that? And the reason is I knew the people that were going to try to get that wouldn't understand. And they would start putting stuff out there that would do one of two things. It wouldn't work for them. I was really trying to save them, because there was a method to my madness as to why I did what I did in my jury selection at the time, in the order that I did it, with the wording that I used, that wouldn't work for their case. So I was actually doing them a favor. But more importantly, they didn't know the why. So if they got challenged, I didn't want a bad ruling coming down. And so that was something else that we touched on just briefly at the first charge. And that was, what do you do when you get the anti-reptile motions? It's pretty simple. I have a saying when I teach. Every one of my students, know the law. You see what we're arguing with the edge? It's black letter law. Judge, I'm arguing duty. I'm arguing breach. I'm arguing proximate cause. And here's the case law. And judge, what they want you to do is they want you to throw away hundreds of years of jurisprudence. They want you to go on a limb, and they want you to get overturned on appeal. I just want to protect the judge. And we talked about the best way to present that, and then we stood up and we argued it. We practiced arguing it. We gave the sample arguments. So that being said, so everybody went through the billboard, and then we went back and looked at the rules, right? Remember that stool that we showed on what a rule is supposed to tell you, right? Let's go back and let's just find it. The safety rules have got to tell you what happened, was it preventable? And so what we did was, when's the first in time it could be prevented, and who could have prevented it? That was the addition that we made. And let me just pause right here. This slide is older than Jenna. Okay? This is like the very first stool ever invented on the safety rules. And folks, what we need to understand, and a lot of folks will say, hey, look, I've read the book. It used to be I read the book. Now I get I've been to the seminars. This stuff evolves like at light speed. To use a power word, it evolves NASCAR fast. Because every week, the home office, the HQ, the brain center are running focus groups. 2, 3, 4 a week. And you got Mindy Bish, you got Greg Luther, you got David Hoey just going 100 miles an hour trying out new stuff. And this stuff is always evolving, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we had another charge. So that being said, you know, we didn't do anything during COVID because you just couldn't do anything during COVID. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to come back after everybody was vaccinated and we were all safe. We had the Tenancy charge too. Now, at the end of the first charge, we sat around in our groups, people gave their billboards, they gave us the facts of the case, and then they would say, after the first day when we talked about case selection, we talked about opening statements, we talked about discovery, we talked about depositions, order of proof, closing arguments, we would spend the second day talking about what is it that we want to accomplish, or what is it you need help with in your case. And we broke up into 3 groups. Tony Seaton took a group, George Fuster took a group, and then some sorry folks got stuck with me. I don't want to say I had the remedial class, but Andy Davis was in that class. Enough said. Andy, if you're watching this live or later on, you know I love you. I'm just kidding with you. So that was a good day. And that's the key to this group. You know, earlier I said we're very secretive with people outside, but people inside, we'll give you our right eye. You want my notes? Here. Oh, you want me to come and do a focus group for you and role play with you? Sure. Jenna, you tell me, folks, how many folks have dropped whatever it is they're doing to ask for help from you, and you're like, fine, I'll drop it. Boom, here we go.
Absolutely. As long as I
Right?
know that they've been to enough colleges and know enough that what I'm going to be sharing with them will be used appropriately. Absolutely. I have nothing but time for that.
Exactly. See, and that's what, Don used to say this about the edge. It was at the beginning, it was the reptile, but now the edge, because it gives us an edge. He would say, you can do this stuff by yourself, but it's better when you share it with somebody. And the more people you can share it with, the better the results. And so we and I've made that the G version, by the way. Any questions, ask Jenna. She'll tell you the original version. So we sat down, Tony, George, and I, and we said, well, what's going to make this better? The second charge. And so what we came up with was, what is it that we are all doing that not a lot of other folks are doing? What is the one tool that we need to get better at? And so what we decided was we would do focus groups. Now, the way we did that, we did Zoom, right? So here we go. I'm not going to play any clips because we all signed confidentiality agreements and I just don't feel comfortable sharing that. But what you have is, here's your focus group, right? Except for Mr. Aaron there in the top left corner. He went away. He was the one that set everything up. But here are 6 individuals who were going to listen to 3 specific cases. And so what we did is we took these 3 individuals. We had George do the intro. We had Andy do some jury selection. Russ Thomas gave an opening statement. And then John Willis tried to get a date from Heather in the middle. Just kidding. She was really coming on to him, by the way. That was hilarious. He gave a narrative, a negative attribution, basically a narrative focus group. And so what we did is we sat down, we said, all right, we're going to prepare for this months in advance. So we had everybody that was going to go had to lock in early. And this is the great thing about Evans Mill. The first time we had to share the compound with folks, because this was a new thing, kind of like this webinar right now, or this podcast. We've got maybe 30 people on live right now. We had about 15 folks the first time. The second time we did the charge, we sold out. In fact, we were worried that we were going to have people sharing rooms. And by sharing rooms, we're talking about a king-size bed. I think Tony Seaton snores. That's the rumor. I'll let him confirm that. I'm not sure. Anyway, the poor Davis boys, since they grew up together, were going to have to share a room. But things happen. We had a room for everybody. But we rented out the entire place. So months in advance, we secure the facilities, we secure the role, and we said, all right, here we go. We're going to choose 3 cases to work on. And so what we chose was a med mal. We chose a premises liability case involving a parking garage. And we chose a nail salon. A lady goes into a nail salon. So the whole group had to vote on it. And what we did is we used it as a tool, right? So we took the first time and we said, what makes an edge case? Do these cases meet the case selection criteria? But more importantly, is there a systems failure in the case? And so for the first month or so, we debated what cases we were going to use, right? Who says this one? Who says this one? Why? Tell us your thoughts. So we choose 3. And so then what we do is we say, what are we going to learn from these 3? Well, we wanted to try out in voir dire to see if we could get the jurors to start thinking about their expectations when it came to medical treatment. And following the system of checklists that were created to make sure that doctors didn't skip steps and cause somebody to have a heart attack and die when it came to blood thinners. So Andy did that. And, I'd like to say that it was a walk away success. But, that's just not who we are. What we did was we watched Andy's voir dire and we broke it down. And we were like, you know what? This is how this question would be better. So the person whose case it was would go back and go, okay, now I'm going to reword this question and I'm going to try the jury selection this way because I know it's not working the way Andy did it. The second thing we did was we said, okay, we're going to do negative attribution. So we had John Willis do it. Now, what we intended from that one is it's great to have a negative attribution, but what do you do with it? And I think that's where the magic was. What we did is then we took the results of those focus groups, of that focus group, and we said, all right, if you got a case like this, if you got a premises case or what have you, this is what you look for. This is how you're driving. So, we asked jurors, what was it you need to know? What more do you want to know? There you go, ladies and gentlemen, there's your discovery. You want to know what to ask for in discovery? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see on Listservs, anybody got a copy of, or I get this all the time, hey, Danny, I know you're a trucking lawyer. Give me your standard set of trucking interrogatories. Well, that's good. You can have my standard set, but it may not be what you need for your case. How are you going to know what you need for your case? That's right. The standard answer, Jenna, is you focus group it, right? Tell me what you want to know.
Yep. Test, don't guess.
Correct. So I really enjoyed that part of it because you could start seeing light bulbs going off. And people started to get it. More than one person said, I've always wondered what I do with these. What do I do with these? I've always wondered, I get what I need to look for. I didn't know how to use it in the blocking and tackling stuff. So then the other one we did was we did a focus group on a nail salon case. It's made national news. It's a horrible case, huge systems failure. You have a company who is hiring folks that are not qualified to do the nail tech work. And if they don't, and they're not cleaning their instruments and they don't know what to do when they stick somebody, and lady about loses her hand. So it's a tragic situation. But we wanted to see if there was actually a systems failure there. And we wanted to test out attitudes about nail salons. What is it about a nail salon and the people who go to nail salons? And so we worked on how to find and how to explore Bubba's attitudes on those kind of things. So that's what we did on day one. We went through all three focus groups. We broke them down. We talked about how it is that you wanted to go about interpreting them. Now, just kind of nuts and bolts, so you guys get something here, not just me prattling on about what we did. Leading up to it, we talked to the group about how do you go about getting your participants for a focus group. Some people like to use Facebook Marketplace. Some people like to use Craigslist. A lot of folks, once they get their focus group participants, ask them to give you more names of folks that they know, so you can go out and contact them as well. And that is 100% great way to do it. The people that we got was through a service that I use because I just don't have the manpower to spare to recruit people. I don't want to pay that extra salary. But we talked about what it is we're looking for and the screening process. What is it? What kind of juror are we looking for? What's the demographics that we want that is useful to us to help us down the road when we need to go back and we pull our memos and we're reading over our memos. Oh, this looks like this kind of person who has this life experience is going to feel this way. And we showed that as well. You know, the people that were bad for us, what did they all have in common? What is it that we need to look for when we're in jury selection so we know how to identify this person that's not the best fit for this case? And it was interesting because we had one lady that was like terrible on the med mal case, but man, on the nail salon case, she was like, she's going to burn the place down. And we had to figure out, we were trying to figure out what was it that changed that? What was it about her? So that being said, that's what we did the first day. The second day, it was kind of a revamp. I don't want to say we revisited, but what we did was we went back around the room because we had a lot of new folks again, folks that had never been, folks that had just started their EDGE journey, and we went back through the case selection criteria. And I'll just read you some of the comments. The big takeaway was the case selection criteria. It seems that something clicked for a lot of us with the case selection criteria. If you do the case selection criteria right, you know what your case is about. My epiphany was that once everyone really worked through the case selection criteria, then the rules and the codes jumped out at them. If we can all insist that case selection criteria and billboards are done, then we can work on cases on a whole different level. And so with that being said, I thought it might be good to just kind of show you a case selection criteria that we use. And this is what we use in our office. If you want a copy of it, I will put my stuff up here in a little bit for everybody to take down. I will be more than happy to email it to you. But what we got here is my version of the case selection criteria. Now, case selection criteria is on the left, right? Random victims, why should Bubba care? The systems failure. You need to fill that out. But Jenna, one of the tools that we've not talked about today that I'm going to put you on the spot for, what are the 3 reasons we lose?
Oh, come on. All right. Negative attribution.
Very good.
Compassion.
Hey, hint.
Oh,
yeah, I was going to say, hint. You can look at the share screen.
I'm not looking. I need to know these things. I need to know these things. Compassion fatigue is number 2. And tort reform.
Correct. Or the defendant's version, like that's their system failure. Oh, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket if we let this plaintiff have a verdict, right?
Yep.
And so if you look at this form, you got the billboard, you put the 2 sentences up there and you fill it out. It ain't rocket science, folks. It's dirt simple, but it makes a huge, huge difference. Jenna, how many cases do you fill out your case selection criteria on?
Well, every single one.
There you go.
But I will say, it's tough to implement it. It doesn't seem, it's dirt simple, but it can be difficult to change your ways. So I always tell people, yeah, these things are simple and you got to do them. They are foundational. They are crucial, but, ease into it. Maybe you didn't do it for the one, maybe for 5 of your cases that you have right now. So go back and do it and see if you want to, might even change your mind about whether you want to continue to pursue those cases. And then just make a decision in your firm that you're going to continue doing it on the new cases. And then slowly but surely, you'll be able to implement this stuff.
And it's life changing, right? You have it And then when you're doing your discovery, you put it up in front of you, along with your focus group memos, and you draft your discovery, right? When you're doing your focus groups and you're doing your narrative and you're making sure that you're not facting it up, that you're just putting in the case neutral facts. You got the case selection criteria in front of you. When you're getting ready for your depositions and you're doing your hits, and somebody may ask, well, what's a deposition hit? You know, depositions, what we covered in the charge 1, what we talked about briefly in charge 2, the hits are what you need to prove your case. And it's what Bubba needs to hear for Bubba to rule in your favor. But when you're drafting your outline with your hits, you got your case selection criteria in front of you. When you're drafting your cross exam after your deposition, when you're drafting your direct exam, guess what's in front of you? All the way through the case, up until the closing argument, when you're getting ready the night before and you're reviewing your stuff, you pull out your case selection criteria just because it focuses you. So that being said, you know, we talked about billboards, we talked about random victims, we talked about some of the questions that we can use in voir dire, and we really talked about, one of the last things that we talked about was the emotion in the case. What's going to be, because let's face it, if we're talking about logic, we're going to lose, right? Black hats, they've got one thing going for them, and that one thing is they are emotional vacuums. They want to walk into the courtroom and they want to suck up the emotion. And it's our job to find it. We need to find the lies in the case. We need to find the hypocrisy in the case, and we need to look for the betrayal. Those are the keys to put your verdict into orbit. So what's your takeaway? Bottom line, what is it that we learned at the charge? We learned the basics. We learned what it takes to be an edge case. We saw what was required in case selection criteria to make sure we got a good case. We made sure that we had good, solid rules. We learned what it took to have a focus group, how to set up a focus group, how to interpret the focus group. And then we talked about and we learned how to implement that in our cases. Now, as much as I love our charges, as much as I love the bonding that goes on in our charges, they are no substitute for the best way to learn this. And I would be remiss if I did not tell you, if you've not been to a college, you are missing out. Now, there are lots of courses. There are now undergraduate and there are graduate courses. And some folks will say, why do I not just want to jump into the graduate courses? And I can tell you, you got to learn to walk before you can run. But just so you're not disappointed, you know, I'm in the process of revamping the basic deposition course because we've learned more. We've learned more for the basics that you're going to need to take the cross exam course, that you're going to need to take the hit list course. But bottom line, you take the deposition course, it's going to help you in your everyday practice. But you got to start. Where do you start? Not to quote Sound of Music, but you got to start at the very beginning. Not with do, re, mi, but you got to start with the rules. And then from the rules, you go to opening and focus group, because that's the foundation principles that you got to build your case on. So I have gone for nearly 50 minutes. I know people are probably tired of listening to me ramble on, especially with my Tennessee twang.
Well,
Jenna,
why don't we dive into a few questions?
Okay.
We've got about 9 minutes left, and I've got a few. If anybody watching live is confused about the question situation. Apparently, there's been a little bit of difficulty. So I'm going to pose some questions that came to me as I was listening to Danny, and hopefully these are questions that are helpful to all of you out there in the audience. Please make sure you post your questions because we will get answers to those questions to you. As we mentioned earlier, as Danny said, this is our first episode and we're still working out a few kinks. So thank you for your patience, but let's get to a couple of questions that I started thinking about, Danny. All right, first of all, so you mentioned that you came up with this summit or this charge idea because of a lackluster participation in the listserv. So how did you see that getting together and doing this charge or summit translated to more participation in your listserv?
Well, so I think, let me just read a comment. So Tennessee is, people think, oh, it's not that big of a state. Well,
I thought it was Kentucky.
Tennessee's really, well, yeah. I mean, we're even confused. People don't even know where we are. I mean, if you watch your football teams, come on. Anyway, Tennessee's really long. You got folks in Memphis that will never see the people all the way over in Bristol. And so here's something that Chuck Holiday said. It was great to put faces to names in person and among folks who want to better themselves by trying cases. To simple, boil it down, bottom line, it was companionship. Once you have broke bread with somebody and you've gutted out and struggled with somebody, you're going to have a new bond. And it's amazing just the camaraderie and the relationships that are built. You've never seen anybody in their most vulnerable state as when John Griffith breaks out a guitar and Tony Seaton starts singing, right? Or Russ Thomas. And that's just afterwards. But you also have never seen somebody so vulnerable as they're standing up and they're just not getting it and they're struggling. And then somebody pitches in and you see the light bulb on. And that instance, when everybody sees it and everybody has the same reaction because they're getting it too at the exact same time, it creates a new understanding. It creates a new excitement and a new bond that just can't be broken. So like our Tennessee group is solid as a rock. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find a tighter knit group, especially the ones that have been to the charge twice. Like when we go out and we're at a TTLA or something, we all gravitate towards each other.
Well, Tennessee is lucky because they have you and they also have Tony Seaton, who are, teach at KTI and all that sort of thing. What about states who don't have a faculty member? What do you suggest for those listservs to bond like you guys did?
Well, Jen, I think that first of all, I would just reach out. I would reach out to the home office. Hey, look, we want to do something like Tennessee. We want to have a charge. In fact, Kentucky has reached out. We got Mike Schaefer, who is in charge of the Kentucky listserv. We've let him in to the Tennessee listserv because he's got a license. He meets the criteria. He wants to do the same thing in Kentucky, and we're trying to help him get up and running to do something similar in Kentucky. So Kentucky, we're working on it. We're going to be up there. Lucas Faust and myself are going to try to help you out with that. But you got myself, you got Lucas, you got Mindy. We're happy to contribute in your state charges any way you do, any way you want. Because let me say this: after we're done, folks will take what they get and they run to the colleges, right? To me, looking at it, the folks that haven't been to the colleges as much as they should, they flock to the colleges because they know what they're missing. And so it's a great means to A, form bonds, but B, it makes you thirst for more information.
Do you find that, I find that sometimes when I post on our Edge listserv here in Washington, for example, there are not very many people who have been to colleges. I mean, I think you have to have at least gone to a seminar to get onto the listserv, but some of the responses I get or I see others getting are not not super accurate. Do you think that this type of concerted effort to get everybody on the same page is helpful in that regard?
It is, and this is why. So, you know, and just so you know, I see everybody's, every state's, every section's post. So I get about 1,000 emails a day. So I know what you're talking about, Jenna. And it's important that folks feel comfortable to post, even if it's wrong, so they can get corrected. You know, whether you believe the Bible is inspired or not, it's got some good ideas. And that being, those who are in error, you who are righteous, restore the one gently. When you're correcting somebody because they got it wrong, please be gentle. Don't be a jerk. And that's what's great about this, because when you get in that situation in person, it's much easier to be gentle, to correct things. And there's a lot of correction that goes on. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts. Folks are going to get it wrong, and we're going to work through it together, and we're all going to get on the same page. And let me just tell you, we don't have a lot of that in Tennessee. We don't have a lot of correction that's got to take place.
Do you know, have you noticed it being less that way after the summit? Because more people.
It is. It's that way after the summit, and it's usually like 6 months down the road, because as soon as the summit's over, we have about 4 or 5 folks that run out and get a college course.
Okay. Well, what do you deal with Listserv fatigue at all? You know, I think we've all heard of Zoom fatigue. There's only so many Zoom, or not just Zoom, but other remote ways of communicating that a person can handle. I find that I have Listserv fatigue. I have so many freaking listservs. The emails are coming in constantly. I can't keep them straight, nor do I actually really want to. How do you address that issue?
Well, I think you're talking to the king of listservs, of emails, right? So let me just tell you, I've got right now 108 in my inbox emails. Probably 80% of them right now are listservs, other Keenan listservs, and that's just in an hour. Okay. What I would tell you is a listserv is only as good as its moderators. And this is something that Lucas and Mindy and I are committed to. In my humble opinion, the Tenancy listserv is probably the best listserv there is. I'm a little biased. It's followed closely by probably the voir dire and the tractor trailer listserv, all of which are Keenan listservs. And the reason being is they provide detailed information. A listserv is only as good as the moderators or 2 or 3 people who are in charge of that listserv and their enthusiasm provides. If you don't, and we don't want the moderators. So we got some great listservs like Texas. Holy cow, y'all are awesome. Just shout out to you. You're great. The employment listserv. Amy, whatever you have, I wish I could ball it up and send it to everybody else. So for those of you who are in a state or in a listserv or a group of listservs that you see 1 or 2 questions maybe a month, and you're tired of it and you want to get the most out of it, you need a volunteer's tribute. Hey, if you're motivated enough to reach out to make your listserv better, then email me and we'll start plugging you in. That's how I became the Tennessee listserv. Don came. Well, actually, he didn't come to Tennessee. He was at a seminar. He said something about he was going to start this thing called Listservs. He needed one in every state. And I just said, here am I, send me. And so I signed up, and that's how I did it. I was willing to serve. And that's what we need, Jenna. We need people willing to serve. But to combat listserv fatigue, I think that's combated by content that's practical, that's immediately applicable, and people willing to help. Those are the 3. So we like stools, right?
Three is a great number. All right. Okay. So we are at that 1 o'clock hour. Thank you so much, Danny, for sharing with us today all of the
Sure.
things that you've learned about making your listserv better and bonding the practitioners who use Edge in their practices in Tennessee. Thank you to everyone who's joining us here live today for the inaugural episode of Fridays with Keenan's Cutting Edge. If you liked today's video, please click that thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and sign up for alerts so you don't miss an episode. Next week, we have Bijan Darvish out of California, who will be sharing with us about representing police officers. What a timely and interesting topic. I look forward to learning more about it, and I hope you do too. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next time.